guys are watching your Monsanto ad, I'm singing old praise songs. We'll see if we can counteract the effects of glyphosate. Pray it away. Pray the evil away. Oh, man. So, hey guys, I got a urinary tract infection ad. That's nice. Pray that away too. Oh man, how are you guys this evening? Let's see, it was a couple of weeks ago before I went on my world tour of 2 locations in Florida. Before I went on my world tour and did my gardening talks, I did one of my favorite live streams yet, which was the live stream on gardening and sand, and it was my favorite because I got to make fun of the prequels of Star Wars, so it was that was the best. But anyhow, I'm back, and I said during that one that I was going to give you guys a hey, tea delivery. Thank you. So I said to you guys that I was going to be doing one on clay, because a lot of people deal with clay. Now, just because I deal with sand in Florida, and I dealt with sand for years, it doesn't mean that I should take my experience and put it on top of everybody else, right? I mean, that's what people do. Because I had this experience, this is a universal truth. This is universal, and this is actually what happens with a lot of gardening books. Is people will take where they're writing from, and they'll say, this always needs full sun, or raised beds are simply the best method, and it's not true, because there's all kinds of different ways to do things, and there are all kinds of different soil conditions. There are different crops. There are different varieties of crops. I mean, think of how many different varieties of beans have been bred, or brassicas, or whatever else. So there's no universal prescription for your soil. We have to kind of work in groups and then figure out in those groups how we're going to work it. And there's different types of clay. There is burned out clay. There's highly mineralized clay. There's all kinds of clay. But I got a ton of information on clay today, and I'm going to run through it for those of you guys that are dealing with clay soil. And I had the experience of working with clay soil when I was in Tennessee, and I did that for 6 to 8. I was off and on up there for 8 years, but I really lived there solidly for 6. But before we get into all that, I have a couple of cool things to share with you guys. Here's the thing, if I pump the volume up too much, it starts blowing out, and I don't want to blow it out. Let's see if I can, you know what I'll do? I'll bring this microphone a little closer and see if that's a little better for you guys. It's not exactly it's a studio mic. It's made to be I'm supposed to be right here talking to you guys all the way through. Coming up live on David the Good, we're going to be talking about some of the most exciting things you can do with clay. But before that, 15 ways to improve your marriage in only 15 seconds. We'll be back after these messages. Yeah, that's the way you're supposed to use this mic. I'm using it to catch a whole room. Anyhow, let me show you the cool thing that's going on here. This is my new channel. This is my new channel right here. This is a freeze frame, and as you'll see up in the top left, it says live at the Great South Florida Food Forest Project. Almost a 2-hour presentation there. It's my talk on establishing food forests, the tour of it, questions and answers, and all kinds of stuff. Very entertaining, but there's a ton of information. This is like the definitive food forest talk that I have ever given. And if you are a subscriber, this is unauthorized.tv. I had a choice. Do I sign on deeper with Google and YouTube, or do I set up a alternative platform just in case? So I set up an alternative platform. I was invited to be one of the original people on this new channel, and I said, you know what, go for it. So, no, this is not going to be on YouTube. It's only on unauthorized.tv. My Food Forest tour is on YouTube. That's the tour. I did a short tour of the South Florida Food Forest Project, and I did a tour of the North Florida Food Forest Project. But the complete talk is for members. So I had the opportunity of offering memberships on YouTube. I mean, believe it or not, I've got over 700 videos, and I mean, these videos are making like less than, I mean, they're making like $1 a month each or something. It's so bad. The revenue on YouTube compared to how much time I put into it is just, you know, we're living off of ads, and maybe Monsanto doesn't want to do as many ads on my stuff or whatever, but the ad revenue just doesn't really cut it. And so if you want to support the channel, I am going to put up the stuff that I only put up for summits. I've got multiple like long presentations, like hour-long presentations that I normally sold as downloads. They're all going on there. If you want to sign up as a Good Gardener and do the Good Gardener subscription, it's $5 a month, and then you can watch all the exclusive stuff that I'm putting up there. So this is, for those of you that are like, you should get on Patreon, or you should have a tip thing on PayPal. I don't like to do that. I like to have something that's legitimately useful and worthwhile, that I mean, I'm selling access to this stuff for $5 a month. So there it is. There's the base awful capitalism of it. I don't want to e-beg. I'm not gonna be like, please send me money. You know, please send me money. No. If you like what I'm doing and you want to do the $5 a month thing, that's awesome. You can get the Good Gardener subscription. Sign up for unauthorized.tv. I put a link below the video. But if you want to keep watching free on YouTube, no problem. I've got stuff free on YouTube too, and I'm going to keep up YouTube. This was just a really good opportunity, and hopefully, you know, it comes together so it will support more of the longer video production I like to do. I like to do full-on films like the gate grafting demonstration, all that kind of stuff. We can do like really big talks. So I want to. I just want to offer this to anybody that's said, how can I support you? How can I do Patreon or whatever? I'd rather not be on Patreon. I mean, I am. I don't use it. People told me to sign up, but I don't like that whole, like, please go and support what I do. I'm an artist. No, I'm a gardener. I'm a teacher. If you like what I'm doing, sign up. But I want to actually give you something for the sign up rather than, thank you so much for signing, for supporting me. I'm going to go buy some beard wax and a pumpkin spice latte. All right, so this is another fun one. We gotta do this. Our gentleman says, can I get a subscription for a pint of plasma per month? It depends on your blood type, I think. All right, so this one, I thought of you guys. I saw this on my Cocoa Plum video, which I filmed in North Miami, on one of the beaches in North Miami, Alito State Park. I went and I filmed a video with my sister Stephanie, who had never tried eating cocoa plums before. So I went and looked at some of the bushes, and I stood in front of the bushes, and I explained, this is one of Florida's native fruits. How cool is this? And then I get this comment below, Laura Barber, could have just actually, shown us a bush or the tree and then zoomed in on the leaf and actually shown is the fruit growing on the plant, but oh blank no, what a waste of time. Thumbs down! And so I know you guys like to do the thumbs down. Thumbs down! There's always the one person that's like, I can't stand grafting. Thumbs down! I know you're eating bacon. Thumbs down! I hate the fact that you don't believe in birth control. Thumbs down! Thumbs down! Pumpkins? I hate pumpkins! Thumbs down! So this person actually freaked out over cocoa plums. Thumbs down! You wasted my time. You wasted 3 minutes of my time. Let me see. Okay, so anyhow, this is funny. Check this out. Here's the whole video. Oh, I wasted 3 minutes and 6 seconds of your precious time, Barbara. What's your name? No, Laura. Sorry, Laura Barber. Laura Barber. I've got my 70. All right. So here it is. Florida's delicious and abundant cocoa plum. There's Laura's thumbs down right there. And that hurts. I mean, it just burns me up. It's killing me. Sorry, it just makes me laugh. Like, you take the time to write out that you're putting a thumbs down. But if you'll notice here, could you actually just show us the bush or the tree and then zoomed in on the leaf? No. There is a shot of it. Look it. I freeze framed it. There's cocoa plums growing on the plant. Oh, Blake, no, what a waste of time! My thumb is burning. Okay, so anyhow, let's go and... There it is. There it is. Somebody else said my sister was cute. Like, I'm not qualified to comment on that, but my sister was appreciative. All right, let's get to the topic. That's enough wasted time. I could just... Sorry. You don't know the depths of human depravity until you've been on YouTube and you get a certain amount of subscribers. All right, and my cat gives you a thumbs down too, because you mentioned toxoplasmosis. I don't have that. All right, so gardening in clay. Let's get professional here because this is a very professional channel. Gardening in clay. I'm cuckoo for cocoa plums. That's nice. So, all right. Denny says, while on that topic, like this video. Like, unless you dislike clay. Thumbs down! No, I mean, everybody dislikes clay, right? Except for potters. All right. Improving and working with clay soils. A presentation by David the Good. There's some bad things about clay. Clay is rough. Clay is hard to dig. Clay soil does not drain well. It can drown your plants. It can turn into muck. You work it at the wrong time, and you get these clods that turn into bricks, and it can become airless. It's a pain in the neck. You work it at the wrong time, you destroy the structure. When it dries out, it cracks and opens up, and everything looks like a desert. These garden beds that I have here, these were dug in clay soil, and as you see, what we did was we actually dug them with a broad fork. We forked the area up down to about 14 inches, and then we raked and dragged soil over and loosened it up, and we made these beds. Now, these beds aren't perfect. Well, I'll tell you why they're not perfect. Because I made them, and I'm not perfect. I'm good, but I'm not perfect. No, actually, they're not perfect because this was a new installation of garden beds. And one of the things that you really want to do when you have new garden beds is add some compost. And we didn't have compost. This area had been a construction site. Some of it, the ground was all torn up. There were some weeds, there's some material in it. There was some biomass in there, but it wasn't the best. It's not what I like to see. And if we had had compost, we could have put compost through all those beds. Now, to mitigate that, we loosened the soil up and we dug the soil, and I told the woman how to make foliar fertilizer from manure and weeds and that sort of thing, and she watered, and she's getting nice gardens out of there. But it's not ideal because it doesn't actually improve the structure of the ground itself very much to just pour compost tea on it. For structure, you have to do some other things. Dr. Leonard Perry, extension professor, University of Vermont, writes, and I've got the article below here, he writes, if your soil dries like a brick with cracks when it's dry, or in clods, and is like putty when wet, sticking to shoes and tools, you have clay soil. It is hard for most roots to penetrate such soil. Take some soil, add a little water, and form a ball in your hand. Then squeeze the ball into a flat ribbon. If the ribbon reaches 2 inches long or more before breaking, this is a sign that you have clay soil. So, when you play with Play-Doh as a kid and you're like, I'm going to be creative. I'm going to make a snake. I made a lot of snakes. I used to try to sell snakes. I would make them out of clay and, the sculpey clay and bake them in the oven, put little tongues and eyes on them. Look at me. When I was a kid, I'm like, buy my snake. Terrible. They're terrible. But if you can make a snake out of it, then you have clay soil. If you've got some loamy soil, you got sandy soil, it just kind of falls apart, falls back to pieces. But clay, man, you can just work it and squeeze it and make stuff out of it. Yeah, that's not necessarily what you want. And so the first thing that I would say to do is, you're going to have some drainage issues. So get your beds higher. It's very important. The garden lot that I was working on right in the neighborhood here, which is a block away from where we're renting right now, the soil was really hard. It was kind of a black muck clay, and it's fertile soil, But you know what? There are areas where I planted flat, right? I just planted some papaya over there, planted some various things, and something really bad happened. When the rains came, it didn't drain well at all. Like, you go over there and it was just like squish, 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 squish. You'd step in it, and the roots of some of the papaya just rotted. One of my sons had been taking care of these trees, and they were looking really good. And when it was dry, he was carrying water over to them and watering them, and they were getting bigger, and he was keeping them alive. And then in comes the rains, and after a couple of weeks of rain, the roots started rotting out. Some of them just dropped their leaves and rotted and fell over, just killed them. So the first thing you want to do is raise up above if you can. You know, raise it so there's channels beneath that the water can run through, so you don't have this flat area of clay that's going to be a serious mess, and you know, it's going to drown your plants. So get up a little bit. And you know, people think that I hate raised beds. I don't hate raised beds. I didn't like raised beds in Florida sand, and I had good reasons for it. You know, they're higher drainage. The soil warms up faster in spring. That's not what you want in sandy soil. You know, I don't want the soil to heat up faster. Florida's too hot as it is, and I don't want more drainage. I had to pour more water into my raised beds. Ridiculous. No, so I don't like raised beds necessarily that much for Florida conditions. But for clay and bad drainage, that's when raised beds are great. Get it up over a little bit. Now, another thing you can do, which is going to actually affect the structure itself, is extra calcium can help clay. It helps the soil flocculate. And I know that Arch Enema is going to say something about flocculation. So, flocculate. So, flocculation, that means that things clump up nicely. It gets instead of having one big gooey mass, it helps it separate up a little bit. Makes a little bit of a chemical change in the soil. So, now, if you've got alkaline clay, don't add lime to it. That's a bad idea, because you don't want it to go more alkaline. In that case, you use gypsum. Gypsum is not going to adjust it up and down. It's going to put the calcium in, but it's not going to, shouldn't change your pH very much. But if you have acid clay soil, adding a little bit of lime can help it. But gypsum all around is good for it. It can really change the structure and allow it to work a little better. So here's another thing you can do, is if you dig and then don't step on it again. Like, you dig the soil up, you break the structure up, you loosen it up. John Jeevens, with his Grow More Vegetables method, which I have the book around here somewhere, he's a big fan of double digging. Now, there are up and down points to double digging. One thing is that in clay, it's a horrible amount of work to double dig. You know, you're digging these trenches and you're using a fork in the soil. You can bend the tines on the fork. You get a rock in there. I mean, in Tennessee, I had rocky clay that was so hard, I had to dig holes to plant trees with a pickaxe. I had to buy my first pickaxe to dig holes to plant apple trees. It was not good. Broad fork helps a lot, and I recommend the Meadow Creature Broad Fork. Brought to you by Meadow Creature. MeadowCreature.com for all your forking needs. So, the Meadow Creature I like because I haven't been able to break it, and I break like everything. So, it's sort of like something you would kill zombies with. You would stick it on the front of your vehicle and you would plow through the crowd of your former neighbors. You know, take them out with a broad fork. I love that thing. It's the bomb. And I haven't been able to break it yet. But the nice thing about it is that instead of having to, you know, do all this digging and twisting and turning and digging and twisting and turning, you kind of get this kind of even rowing motion. You can work it partway into the soil and work some of it and then work it a little lower. When you're dealing with clay, it's not, you know, you're not having to bust the whole thing to bits. You're loosening it, you're adding some aeration down into the soil, but you're not completely having to invert and turn and dig like crazy. So it's a big help. I like the broad fork for working with clay soil. I've used it a lot here. It's been a lifesaver because I went from, you know, gardening in sand, where it's like the broad fork is great because I can dig really fast, but I don't need it. I can just dig with a shovel. To here, I'm like, I am not digging out with a shovel. I'm going to poke the broad fork in the ground and dig. And now, the other thing, when you dig, if you want to make the structure different, if you want to make the structure better, add a lot of organic matter, any organic matter you can get. But like finished compost, great. Rake some compost in there. Rake some leaf mold in there. You can add rotten sawdust. Make sure it's rotten. Rotten wood chips. Like I used to have these wood chips, and I used them to make potting soil. I would get the tree companies who drop this huge pile of mulch, and I would just let it rot, and it would rot for 2 years, and then I would dig into the middle of it. It was this spongy, rotten. It had earthworms in it. It was just like the main, it had rotted down enough that it's not going to suck all the nitrogen out of the soil, and that's great. And big chunks of rotten wood and things, that's good. You can also possibly add some biochar. I was reading, well, I'll read it to you. This is funny. Dr. Rebecca T. Barnes' study on biochar in clay and sand. Here's the abstract. So just in case you guys don't want to read the whole thing, I'll read you the abstract. The addition of charcoal or biochar to soil has significant carbon sequestration and agronomic potential, making it important to determine how this potentially large anthropogenic carbon influx will alter ecosystem functions. We used column experiments to quantify how hydrologic and nutrient retention characteristics of 3 soil materials differed with biochar amendment. We compared 3 homogeneous soil materials, sand, organic-rich topsoil, and clay-rich haplodirt, to provide a basic understanding of biochar soil-water interactions. On average, biochar amendment decreased saturated hydraulic conductivity, K, by 92% in sand and 67% in organic soil, but increased K by 328% in clay-rich soil. What she's saying there is that the saturated hydraulic conductivity, that means the drainage, okay? The drainage or not drainage. So drainage was decreased in sand and in organic soil, which is great. That means water sticks around longer. But in clay, it increased hydraulic conductivity. So it actually increased the drainage in the soil by 328%, which is huge. The change for K in sand was not predicted by the accompanying physical changes to the soil mixture. The sand biochar mixture was less dense and more porous than sand without biochar. So I put a link to this, to the abstract and the study below. But there is some good research to show that adding biochar to your clay soil will actually allow it to drain better. And biochar, unlike regular organic matter, doesn't just disappear in the soil. It sticks around it could stick around for centuries. So you got little chunks of charcoal, little bits and pieces. I recommend that you charge it first before you put it in there. Soak it in something nitrogenous. Dig it in. So you might rake it into your beds. What I would do, though, is because this is all in the experimental research stage, I would do some beds with biochar and some without and just see what the difference is. See if you see a big difference before you commit to just packing charcoal in all your soil. All right, so in clay, adding biochar helped the drainage. In sand, it helped retain more water. So that's it. And you can also dig in the rotten sawdust or rotten mulch. Or you could do like a forest floor. Let me show you something. This whole presentation on composting is going to be on unauthorized.tv, but I'm going to play you a clip here. And here's a tip. Let's see. I'm going to play you this clip, and you can watch this. This is the forest floor approach to fixing clay soil. Now this is at the lot where after we dug and we cleared forest and we didn't put down mulch again, things got mucky and sticky and cracked and whatever else. But this is what you want to do. Do the natural forest floor thing. Check this out. Here's a typical little piece of forest floor here. Got some sticks that are starting to rot, fall apart, some little bean pods, some blooms that have fallen off the trees, a little bit of weeds growing. But if we go a little deeper, you can see that there's a lot down here. If you see, this is humus. This is alive. And not only that, it's really alive. Look at that. There's a millipede right there. And if you're familiar with how composting works, you know that a lot of the bugs come and break things up for you first. Here's a little snail. That's just a shell now. Snail is long dead, but its shell is going to rot into the soil. So we have got a primary decomposer here.
he's chewing up the ground and leaving little manure, insect frass, which is one of the first steps here to things breaking down. So this is breaking down into the ground, and we all know that earthworms do this. There's another little insect right there. We all know that earthworms do this. They tear up the ground and they turn the soil. But look at this. This is compost. And this is just what happens when you let the leaves drop. This lot has not been developed. It's just a regular old suburban lot, but it's been left alone and we've been farming on it. And this corner here we haven't done anything to. We have to get down a little ways before we see what the soil actually looks like, because this is so rich with compost. We have an inch or two of humus on top. Let's see if we can get to the actual, there we go, there's the clay underneath. But you can see the clay is rich and black. It's not been baked by the sun, it's been protected. The humus has fallen into it. So there's a massive amount of life in here. We've got all kinds of insects and worms working together and turning all of what drops off of the tree into beautiful soil.
So there we go. That's a clip from my super easy composting video, which I did for a summit. It's like I'm trying to remember which one it was. Oh, it was the Garden Hack Summit, and I've got it back so I can use it. So I'm going to put that up for my subscribers on unauthorized.tv for you good gardeners. I put the link below. But anyhow, that when stuff falls on the ground, it falls on top of the clay. It rots and it actually protects the clay from that whole cracking and getting soppy wet and then drying and cracking and back and forth. Like when I was in Tennessee, my front lawn, which was kind of patchy because I didn't really care for it much, there would, it would form all these cracks through it, and it would just all separate, and it was basically like, ripping the Bermuda grass apart. It was amazing. So if you've got the forest is always dropping stuff on the top. So I think it's really important to think about, getting that organic matter on top of the soil and keeping it from being naked. Like, just keep it covered. So I put another link to an article below, which I thought was pretty good. Barbara Pleasant at growveg.com, she wrote, "Promoting ventilation is a constant goal when growing vegetables in clay soil, which is easily accomplished by mixing coarse forms of organic matter into the soil between plantings. Chunky types of organic matter like garden compost, weathered sawdust, or chopped leaves will enhance the structure of clay better and longer than very fine materials like ground peat moss or screened compost. When mixed into tight clay, large particles of organic matter become life rafts for microorganisms, which are major players in the transformation from compacted clay to fertile clay loam. After organic matter has been added to clay soil for more than 3 seasons, you will see dramatic changes in the soil's texture or tilth. It will dry faster after heavy rains, crack a little less in dry weather, and won't require as much digging to keep it aerated." Now what I actually found is it didn't need any digging to keep it aerated and keep it happy. What I did in Tennessee was I dropped all of the neighbors' leaves. I threw down like leaves from the entire neighborhood. I threw down rotten straw that I had raked up at Lowe's. I knew the people there, and they would let me rake the lot anytime I wanted to. I could go out there and I could rake up pine needles, and I could rake up straw and hay and whatever else, and I would throw that down. Now that was before I knew. About the problems with the pesticides and herbicides, the long-term herbicides that are in some straw and hay and that sort of thing. So before I knew about that, I used to rake up all the straw, compost everything. So I piled all that stuff up, and when I got the leaves in the fall, I threw leaves all over the yard. Now it's important when you throw leaves all over the yard that you contain them somehow, because they'll blow right back into your neighbor's yard. So I had all this thick, wet tree company mulch that had been dropped. I had a whole dump truck of it dropped into my little backyard, and I put down all these leaves. And on top of the leaves, I wet it all down, and then I put all this wet mulch on top of it. And what that did was it just stuffed it down. So I put a cardboard layer over the grass, I piled on all the leaves, I piled on the rotten straw and the hay and all that stuff, and I wet it all. And then I piled up like a foot of mulch on top of it. It was insane. And then throughout the winter, I would actually take our compost scraps, I would dig trenches out there, and I would dump them in. So I did this through, and it was amazing. Like the first season, it was pretty good. Like the soil started to get pretty good underneath. But the second season after I did that, I had so many worms, you wouldn't even recognize it. Like I was digging with a pickaxe before, planting apple trees back there. I could dig down into that mulch, and I had that brown crumbly, just like you saw in the video clip I just showed you. It was like a forest floor. And there were worms in it, they were coming up and down, and it was just rich and amazing and aerated, and it was like a sponge. There was no more cracking, there were no problems, because I had covered up the clay, and you've got this layer of organic matter on top, and all the little creatures from the soil, they start coming up and down. You know, the worms come up and down, they dig tunnels all around for you. They'll aerate for you. You just have to be more patient. Like if I wanted to put a survival garden in tomorrow, I would dig. But if I wanted to improve the soil for the next 5 years and do things in a way that is going to bring in the worms, and it's going to make richer soil, it's going to get a lot of fungi growing, I would sheet mulch. You know, drop that stuff down on the ground, let it rot, and let the system's design work for you. Up and down and up and down, the worms would carry that stuff around. So great stuff, you know, and it's just going to take you a little more time, but it's just throwing stuff on the ground. I mean, that's not that hard. I was so startled with how well it looked. And now the reason I left Tennessee was because there was the Nashville flood, and my yard in Smyrna, Tennessee, which is a terrible little town, by the way, Smyrna, Tennessee, there was a drainage ditch that they dug, and they poorly engineered the drainage ditch. So it would flood now and again, but I was able to kind of head it off, and I would throw mulch down again, and I would put thicker landscape logs back there because occasionally the water would run through and pull stuff out. But then when the Nashville flood came, the whole backyard was torn out. It was torn out down to the dead under, basically the bedrock clay and rocks. It was horrible. Just everything just right downstream tore all my, years worth of soil building out in a day. And I said, that's it, I'm leaving. That's it. I'm done. I'm gone. So, you could do just tons of biomass on top of the clay, and it will fix the clay for you. But it just takes time. You've got to think about it. So, going and going. Not moles going in circles. It may be nature rototills with moles going in circles. It's nature. So another thing that is really kind of weird. At our old property here where I was renting when we first got here 2 years ago, there was a garden bed, and the clay there was bad because the area had been scraped and flattened to build the house. So we had these little garden beds. I didn't like the design of them. They were too close together. They were hard underneath. I would dig them, and then they would compact back down with the rain. It was just like I didn't have enough biomass to throw on top of them. I should have long-term dug it, built it, but I didn't because I figured we would be gone at any point. If I had really made them beautiful, I wouldn't have them now anyway, so it doesn't matter. But one thing that I did was I was doing some experiments with seaweed, using seaweed as mulch and as an amendment. And so I took all this seaweed from the beach and I threw it into the garden beds. And one of these beds had a bunch of seaweed thrown into it. Now, along with that seaweed was a lot of beach sand. And I've heard people say, oh no, don't you add sand to your clay or you will get concrete. You'll get concrete. It'll turn right into concrete. The last I checked, actually, there's no clay in concrete. So it doesn't exactly turn to concrete, but there is something to be said there. Like if you've got sharp sand, that's the type with the edges that are sharp. It does like the clay and the sand. If you get the right mix, it can make a really hard soil. I've seen this in southwestern Georgia, there was some really hard clay, and it had some sand in it, and it had some clay in it, and it was just this baking rock stuff that it was like it's like a baseball diamond surface, but harder. And so I thought, well, a little bit of sand might be okay. Well, something really weird happened, and that was that soil got really slick, like really easy to dig, almost weird. It almost felt like the ground was greased. I stick a fork in it, and it was like, and it was like, wow, this clay has gotten really, really loose. Well, apparently what was happening, I asked Steve Solomon about it. I was talking to him on Skype, and I said, Steve, I got this one garden bed, and I said, I put seaweed in it. I said, is there something in seaweed that, like, loosens the soil up? And he said, well, it might be the seaweed. What else? I said, well, it's got some beach sand in it. He said, it's probably the beach sand. I said, really? I said, what's the deal with the beach sand? I thought the sand in the concrete, sand and clay concrete thing. And he says, well, I had a neighbor, and this neighbor decided to add beach sand to his clay to loosen it up. And he said, so he did. And he said that he got this real weird, slick soil. And it's because the sand has all been tumbled like this. So it's like little ball bearings in the soil, all these little ball bearings. And they're being tumbled in and out by the ocean like this. And so you've got all these little round granules. And when you put those in the clay, it really loosens it. And so Steve said, I really didn't like the way those beds dug. Like, they wouldn't keep their structure properly. Like, stuff would just, you'd stick things in there. He said, I didn't like the way it felt. I just didn't like planting in it, or I didn't like the way, that thing did. He said, he goes, but it's possible, some people do it. So beach sand, if you want to experiment with some nice beach sand, you can try it and see how that works for you. I'm still not convinced, though, that it didn't have something to do with the seaweed as well. There may be something going on there, because, they put seaweed in ice cream and beauty products and all kinds of things for a certain texture, so it may have been both. Another option for dealing with clay is to try doing Hugelkultur. Now, Hugelkultur is where you dig a trench, you put in a bunch of wood, you just stick a whole bunch of logs and sticks and everything in there, and then you cover it with the soil that you've removed from the bottom of the trench. So you make this big mound. It's a high mound garden. And that, over a long term, will improve your soil immensely. But it takes a long time. And even, I think Sepp Holzer said at one point, Sepp said that it's really more about improving the soil than it is as a gardening technique. Like, you can garden on top of it, it makes good gardens, but it's like the decade, it's a decade-long way of improving that area of the soil by putting a bunch of biomass into it, and you get rid of a bunch of logs without burning them and losing all the fertility. So you got some trash trees you got to cut down, you got some invasive, bury it down underneath, cover it up with your clay soil, let it rot down, and now it's going to loosen underneath, the worms are going to move into it, you're going to have a sponge there so the clay isn't going to dry out and crack as easily. So you can experiment with Hugelkultur. I'll probably do some of that at my new property just to see how it goes. Because I've been in, some of the clay is just so hard to dig. If I get ambitious, I will dig some and I'll make a Hugelkultur. But it would be much better if you had a bobcat. So my favorite way of doing it is to put the organic matter on top of the ground, and let it rot down slowly and let it be moved in. That seems like a pretty natural method, but I think it would be fun to try the Hugelkultur as well. And now, one final thing you can do with clay. You don't want to improve an entire area. Let's say you don't really feel like I'm going to take this big section and I want to, drop 15 tons of mulch or something. Okay, don't do that. Instead, you can go ahead and do some melon pits, which are something I write about in my book, Compost Everything, The Good Guide to Extreme Composting. And a melon pit is just where you dig into the hole, dig a hole in one spot, you throw some rotten wood into it, you throw some nitrogenous waste, you might throw chicken manure in it, you might put human manure in it, doesn't matter. You're basically digging a hole, it's a couple feet deep, 2 to 3 feet deep, throw in fish guts, throw in all kinds of highly fertile material, throw in a lasagna, doesn't matter. Throw in all the stuff that you're afraid to put in your regular compost pile, the stuff that's really hot, the stuff that's really stinky, the stuff that's nasty, you got a dead rooster, roadkill, whatever, throw it in there. Bury it up well. Now, it's got to be buried deep enough so the dogs don't dig it up. Bury it up well, and then plant some seeds on top of the mound that you make over it. And what you've done is you've created a loose area full of super fertile stuff, and then you plant seeds on top of it. And it's really funny because I did this, the first time I did it with Hubbard squash and with watermelons. But the Hubbard squash, I mean, I was looking at them, and they look like regular green squash when they sprouted. I got about this big, and then suddenly they turned deep green. Like, they just went like crazy green, so green they're almost black. And yeah, they went really green, and they just started running, and I barely had to water them. I didn't have to feed them anything. They ran over the entire area, and as a benefit of them running over the entire area, they're shading the clay, and they're keeping the clay from getting hammered by the sun or by the rain. So you punch these holes, you make them super fertile. The roots will go down and find it. And remember that the roots on some of these plants can go 6 feet, 8 feet deep, down to the microscopic roots. They will find it. If you bury it 3 feet deep, don't worry, they're going to find it. So long as you've loosened up the soil a little bit, they're going to go right down in there. And they just covered the area, and I got all these squash. It was beautiful. And I didn't improve the whole area. I just basically, I punched 5 holes or so in the ground over, about 4 or 5 feet apart, and I planted a couple of sunflowers in each one, or some corn. I planted like some popcorn for the kids. I planted like 5 popcorn seeds on one and 5 over here, and then a few sunflowers over here. And then I planted the melons and the squash in between. I just let them run over the whole ground. So I only had to improve a little bit of the clay. Punch a hole in the ground, made a loose spot, high fertility, boom, runs over the whole ground. And there, I didn't put in a ton of work. So it's really a good, it's just a good way. It's like, I want to improve a little bit of my clay, but I don't want to work that hard. I'm not going to dig the whole area. I don't have enough biomass. I'm going to stick a few holes in the ground, make them super fertile, plant on top of that. So my favorite method for dealing with clay, hands down, if I'm stuck on time, I'll dig, I'll make it loose, and then I won't step on it again. If I'm not stuck on time, my favorite method, hands down, is sheet mulching the area and just let it rot. Now, you can dig it first if you want to. I mean, if you want to bust it up with a broad fork, that's great. But you don't have to rototill it and invert the soil or anything. Stick the tines in there, loosen it. Stick the tines in there, loosen it. That's great. Rake a little compost in when you do that if you want to. But put down that sheet mulching and then go up from there. So I'm going to be putting beds like that, but I'm also going to be doing dug beds because I may be a little short on materials to do that with. My materials are too rough, and it's hard to get chipped materials here for a reasonable. It just doesn't happen easily. So I'll be having to dig and then mulch on the surface, but I'll probably be using green manures as well, which is just where you want to loosen the soil. You plant a bunch of cover crops that can loosen the soil. Masanova Fukuoka used icicle radishes or daikon radishes to punch holes in the ground. Just planted radish seeds everywhere. That taproot goes down, cracks the ground open a little bit, leaves holes behind. Or you can stick a broad fork in and do it really fast. But you put cover crops on the ground, those roots will start working their way through. It keeps the ground alive in between cycles. If you leave it all naked and it's getting rained on, the soil starts to degrade again and crack and all that. Probably, keeping even just weeds, are good to keep it alive, keep it cool, keep it from cracking. All that root material, as it dies and it grows and it dies and it grows, it's adding organic matter to the clay. So, sheet mulch, or if you can't sheet mulch, put down some cover crops and see what happens. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my presentation, my very professional presentation on how to garden in clay. And now I'm going to read everybody's stuff and see what we have here. Answer some questions. Gardener Earth Guy says, beware of grass clippings. Yeah, grass clippings can be a problem. You want a little atrazine? Atrazine, official sponsor of death. Tessa H says, about all I have is a lot of leaves and kitchen scraps. That's great. Just make a compost bin, and you only need to put like this much compost into the top of a bed and kind of stir it in a little bit. Or even put it on the surface. It doesn't actually take a lot of compost to feed the ground. All right. let's see, keep going here. Oh, my brother's here. He says, nice haircut, bro. Evening all. Yeah, I got a haircut in Fort Lauderdale. Got my friend the Cuban barber. Derek says, don't worry, David. I've been using my toxic masculinity to stoically watch you this whole time. I'm here watching you. Yes, thank you. Toxic masculinity for the win. Yeah, Natasha says, I'd have to drive to the beach. Wait, that sounds nice. I know. I have to go and get seaweed. I'm calling in sick today. Tessa says, Hugelkultur can work like right away. I don't know how right away it is. I haven't, like I said, I haven't really done much of anything with it. I buried some stuff in holes and planted on top of it. But my understanding was that it gets better after the first year as everything rots down. Mad Jeeper, New Hampshire says, always keep living roots in a Hugel food web. Yep, it's good. Archanimus67 says, I Hugel the bottom layer of my raised beds. Yeah, good idea. Hard pan clay needs slitting with compost in the lines. Deep induction, Gardener Earth Guy says. Yeah, I mean, if you think you've got hard pan that's unbreakable and you don't think the worms are going to deal with it, no problem. Bust it with a broad fork or however you want to do it. Open it up, down, put some holes through it. Give them a start, you know. Throw some compost in it. That's great. Gardener Earth Guy also says, I would rather clay than sand any day of the week. Well, I would rather sand than clay, but I grew up in the sand. I love digging in the sand. I like weeding in the sand. I like making sand castles. I like sand. Unlike Anakin Skywalker. TJW says, hey, Perry's dad. Hey, TJW. Brian says, have you ever made clay pottery from your soil? Not really. The kids have made like these little creepy heads and pots and creatures and things. Sometimes they leave these little heads around. They look like little shrunken heads. It's cool. But I haven't done much, no. Hey, Rayboth Farm, nice to see you here. Natasha says, I've had good initial success just throwing down cardboard. Yeah, I mean, covering the ground. Kill the weeds. Rayboth Farm says, I just pretend like my ground is concrete, not a stretch, and just build on top. The humic acid eventually starts to change it. I have been using cheap purple top turnips. Good deal. Yeah, go up. And another thing, you know, if you've got the really hard, whatever, clay underneath, and you lay down some cardboard, you put a bed up, and you do the lasagna gardening thing like I did at the summit. Incidentally, the lasagna gardening presentation is also going to be on unauthorized.tv. Here's a link below. That's a really good way to just go up. Just go up, and over time it'll work down. It's amazing. Michael says, what are some good nitrogen-fixing trees that grow in clay? Jacksonville, Florida area. You know, the nitrogen-fixing trees generally grow in all kinds of environments. The Leucaena leucocephala grows really well in the clay because I've seen it all over here. I'm pretty sure the Enterolobium contorsicuum, or any of the Enterolobiums, Cyclocarpum, those will grow quite nicely. I'm pretty sure those are going to grow in the clay because they come from an environment that has a lot of clay. The locusts will grow in clay, the black locust and the honey locust. The honey locust's nitrogen fixation is debatable, but they'll grow in clay. Pigeon peas will grow in clay. So there's some options. And the mimosa tree will grow in clay. Rayboth Farm says, I'm about to go pick up a bucket of coffee grounds from the girl who works at the gas station. If I could get more people to do that, I'd be golden. Yeah, I used to throw coffee grounds on my clay soil as well. That was another thing that I would throw over the beds in Tennessee, because a friend of mine started a espresso joint. It was like Espresso Joe's or something like that. And he had this kind of a drive-through coffee place. and they saved just the full. I gave them trash cans, and they've saved entire trash cans for me until, like, you know, the health inspector or something said they weren't allowed to do it this way, and they had to put it out back or whatever. They kept giving them a hard time over it. But I got tons of coffee grounds out of there. I would get a full, like, big trash can to load up the car every week or more. Let's see. TJW says, here in Illinois there is too much clay. I always have trouble with vegetable gardening here. It's that, get that organic matter in there. Raise the bed up so the drainage isn't a problem. Organic matter, lots of organic matter. And you can also add a little bit of gypsum. Cherry McKinstry is looking to connect with others which want to make a permaculture project together and make a living too. I don't know how well that'll work. I found that a lot of like nonprofit stuff. I've had so many people come to me over the years and say, hey, we're going to make an intentional community, or hey, would you want to be part of this and that and the other thing? And I found that the basic working unit that seems to be solid is a family. But when you try to combine a bunch of people with collective ownership, it always ends up with a couple of people working really hard, a bunch of people complaining and not working. I was on the board of a nonprofit arts group in Nashville for a couple of years, and we had so much trouble with the collective stuff. The best seems to be if you own the property and you invite people to come over and help you now and again, and you give away cuttings and that sort of thing. That's great. But if, like, multiple people own the property, you all want to do it together, you all want to be friends, so-and-so ends up hanging out with so-and-so and taking so-and-so's girlfriend, and then this guy is, like, getting kind of creepy, and then this person over here says, you know what, I'm the one that does all the composting, and everybody else isn't doing the composting, and I quit. And then you're like, well, so-and-so quit, so I quit too. And then they're like, you know, Betty was the one that did the such and such, and you know what else she did? She blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I used to work in nonprofits, and nonprofits, when they run more like a corporation, they can be pretty functional. But when nobody's exactly sure who owns what and where it begins and ends, people don't really share very well. And I mean, it's really unfortunate, but it seems like most of the nonprofit things I've been in, or volunteer groups or whatever, there's usually a few people. It's the 20-80 rule, what's the Pareto principle, right? Like 20% of the people do 80% of the work, and then there's fighting in between. There's one person that's just their burden to carry everything. You might as well just own your own property, and then your neighbor owns his own property. If you have like delineated spaces where people can do their own thing, and then you work back and forth over the fence, you shake hands, you trade things, that seems to work better. So, I mean, good luck, but this is my 2 cents on collective permaculture projects. Idby writes, winter rye works if you use scythe and leave the roots for 2 seasons. Good difference, absolutely. Winter rye. Rye is a fantastic biomass crop. Fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, all the roots in the soil. It's actually the root mass of rye that makes the big difference. Great at it. So, Natasha says, I have a hard time working with others. I tend to get annoyed. Too much drama. Yeah, I don't like the drama either. That's amazing. Yeah, human nature. It is what it is. Nancy says nonprofits are usually a front for socialist politics. Well, they can be, but I worked in Christian nonprofits, and the big problem is that when you have people giving donations and they want everything to work, they want their donations to go towards changing the world and making things better. But a lot of times the donations don't work quite that way. Like, you're paying an ad agency to try and make new graphics, make that African child look like he's starving a little more, but Photoshop the flies out so we don't freak people out too much. It's like, come on, they have like this marketing agency that is, we're going to make sure that you get enough donations because we're really huge on helping Africa. Yeah, but this guy's getting like $50,000 a month to do your it's, come on, No, Jesus was not a bit of a socialist. Let's not get on that one. Jesus didn't like the moneylenders, though, so. Ecocentric Homestead says, every human has his or her own opinion on how things should be done. Because of that, intentional communities are a fight waiting to happen. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Anyhow, I am coming up on the 1 hour mark, so if anybody has any questions, I will sing. I will sing your questions. I will sing your questions live. It's funny. Scrubland Adventure and I spent a lot of time together. He drove me all over the place, and he's got all these cool gardening projects going on. But he was talking about this one YouTuber. He was like saying, you know, it wasn't his cooler. He's like, I'm gonna get this out of the cooler. He's like, I'm gonna get this out of my Yeti, because apparently, like, it's like, I guess it's an upscale cooler. This is my Yeti. I'm going to get this out of the Yeti. And he's like, that just rubbed me the wrong way. You know, it's going to name. So I'm going to get my Taylor guitar. I'm a lifestyle blogger. Instagram me, duckface. Taylor, I love you, Taylor. Taylor. All right, so, oh, come on, Alan, he's gone. He's the only altruistic being. The problem is there are too many humans in human nature, LOL. Yes, there's a catch, no matter what. Oh, I broke a string! I broke a string of my Taylor. There we go. There, it still plays because it's a Taylor. Here we go. Nancy. Let's have uniforms, make them all different. That's good. Mark said altruists are either glory seekers or insane. Let's have uniforms, make them all different. Like the guy, the fat guy on the commercial asking for donations to feed the hungry children. Sing us a song, you're the banjo man. Sing us a song tonight. What are you hoping for, a boy or a girl? I think another girl would be nice. I've got 6 boys already. So I hope for a girl. And if I have a girl, I think I'm gonna name her Pepper. It's a plant. Zoolander. Do you like eating nettles? They're growing everywhere now. Yes, I like eating nettles. I like to pretend I'm a cow. My loquat seedlings are 6 inches tall. Is it too soon to plant them in the yard? No, you can plant them out. They transplant nicely. Just make sure you don't mow them down. Mark them all around, maybe with a little ring of rocks or something. Shares Weird Science Cooking on Facebook. Oh, that must be your site. Look up Cherry on Facebook. Shares Weird Science Cooking on Facebook. Easy buddy. Playing. It's tailor-made for 5 strings. Playing the 5 string. My sugar cane is finally coming up in my clay soil. Marx was an idiot. An idiot who killed 100 million folks. All right, here we go. Yeah. All right, so oh, Wow, snow is melting in Saskatchewan. Oh, that's so beautiful. Snow is melting in Saskatchewan, and the birds are singing special spring songs to one another. That is so beautiful. My Taylor guitar. Hi Taylor, could you send me, you know what, I have 60,000 viewers now. Why don't you send me the whole line of Taylor guitars? I will play them. I know that they sponsor artists, right? Of course, you know what, if Gibson sends me a guitar next, I'm dropping this Taylor. Boom, dropping this Taylor. Mark sends a $5 super chat. Thank you, made $5 tonight. Thank you, Mark. That's awesome. I appreciate it. And he says, I live in Virginia, so this is going to be a very helpful topic for me. There's actually some very good soil in Virginia. And if you can work with the clay, you know, clay holds a lot of nutrition. It's generally fertile soil. It's excellent. You know? It's just every kind of soil has its upsides and its downsides. So let's see here. I'm your Huckleberry says, I heard nitrogen fixers only fix when cut back. Thoughts? Yeah, I've heard that too, and then I've heard other people say that they're, you know, they kind of grow and die back a little bit all the time, so don't know. If you want maximum production from them though, like, yeah, chop them back, and then of course when the top that you're cutting down, when you compost that or throw that around another tree, you're definitely giving a bunch of nitrogen to that other tree because the leaves are full of it too. Rots down, feeds the ground, drops the roots underneath. I really am more interested in nitrogen fixers for the biomass because they tend to grow back and produce really quickly. So that's my favorite. So. Well, guys, thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. I will catch you all. I may be a little early tomorrow. I might go early tomorrow because I'm going to be playing out live with my Taylor and with my beautiful wife. We're gonna go out and play a gig. So I'm gonna probably do the live stream early, and then you know, so you guys can catch me then, so I can get out and play before it gets too late. I don't like to go out too late because I'll miss most of the fun. So. Anyhow, guys, thanks for joining me. Be sure to check out unauthorized.tv if you want to support my channel over there. I put the 2-hour food forest presentation, talk, and tour. It's really a ton of information. If you're a Florida gardener, it's well worth the $5 per month. And I'm going to be putting a bunch of other full-on, like, 1-hour presentations and stuff up there. What I'm hoping is this will actually support my cinematography, whereas instead of like on YouTube, I'm often feeding out, you know, 3-minute videos or 20-minute videos or whatever, or shorter ones, because it's just not worth it. Like, I might make $10 on a video over a couple of months, and it's like, I don't know why I spent that much time on it. So when I was offered the opportunity, we'll do memberships over there. I'll diversify, so I'll have my free stuff on YouTube, and I'll do memberships over there, and I will put up all kinds of things. So if you want to be a good gardener and support the subscription, it's $5 a month, and the link is below. So I'll see you on unauthorized.tv, and I'll see you again here tomorrow night. God bless you all, and until next time, may your thumbs always be green.